but I'm going to run through it really briefly to give you an overview of what this is saying and what it means to us and our community, and where we are on this curve. Okay, there's an index, called PCI, which is a rating system for roads. Okay, a rating of 100 is essentially a brand new road, and a rating of 10 or lower is failed. Okay, so roads have an interesting life curve. Right? When I started looking into this, I thought it would be fairly linear. Right? That the roads would degrade the same amount each year. All right, so what happened over the last 5 years would be about the same that would happen the next 5 years. Well, that's true at certain points on this curve. But what turns out that happens is about, over the first 75% of the life of the road, it degrades about 30%. Okay? And so you can be on this part here in this curve where it's fairly flat. The roads are not changing a whole lot. Okay? But as you get farther down on the curve, the life curve, if those roads don't get attention or treatment, they start to degrade faster and faster. All right? So it turns out that every dollar that you spend on rehabilitation while your roads are still in good shape is going to save you about $6 to $10 when they get down lower on the curve, or up to $25 to $50 when they get completely failed and you have to completely restore them. So the message is, like it is with many other things about maintenance, is do your preventative maintenance while you can. This preventative maintenance is much more cost effective than letting the roads degrade. So, as I looked into this further, and the reason this is giving me nightmares, it has been giving me nightmares, is we are kind of on this part of the curve. Okay, we're not on this part of the curve, we're on this part of the curve. Okay, which means that over the next 5 years, the roads are going to continue degrading faster and faster if we don't do something about it. Now, in the original plan that we put together for Fix Our Stuff, the estimate that we had of what it was going to cost to fix each road mile was about $400,000. Okay? We didn't have that money in our reserves. It had not been set aside. So we budgeted for that to start setting aside funds this year, and then keep increasing the amount of funds we were setting aside so that by the time we got to year 6, we would have enough money already in our reserves to replace a couple miles of roads. All right? Because we don't have that money right now. So it was a good plan. However, when you dig in deeper and you look at where we are on the life curve of our roads, it's not going to work out very well for us. So that kind of kicked off an obsessive, compulsive period for me in which I went through lots and lots of information to figure out what can we do about this. Okay? So the curve is it's kind of scary. It's kind of scary because roads are expensive. In almost all communities, roads are the single biggest asset that community has. All right? Today, even for rural roads in communities like ours, if you were to build a brand new road, it would cost you somewhere between $1 million and $1.5 million a mile. Okay? So if we had to start from scratch to build 53 miles of roads, all right, that would turn out to be somewhere between 53 and $80 million to construct the roads. It's not just me, right? That's a lot of money. That's a lot of money. And so that's why we need to do what we can to protect the asset that we have. And we need to do it sooner rather than later. We're going to talk more about how we can approach that. It turns out that we have 2.95% of all the roads in Madera. which is kind of surprising to me. I would have expected that to be a smaller percentage. But if you then take that by the estimated cost to bring the Madera County roads to good condition, and you take that and you look at our percentage of that $1 billion over the next 10 years, you come up with a number of $29,429,412. Not to be exact, because obviously there's some variation in there. These are some rough guidelines. That's a big number. It's a big number. So that's the equivalent of 100% of our current dues for the next 8.9 years. So we did nothing else. If we had no employees, if we had no anything, that would take 100% of our dues for the next 9 years to come up with that amount of money. Currently, on our pipeline project, we do a 3-inch overlay, okay, based on our trench paving. That would give us a lane mile cost of about $240,000 per lane mile in order to do a 3-inch overlay on our existing roads. And so that turns out, when you multiply that by 106 lane miles, to be about $25 million. So you see, the state's numbers are not, they're not crazy state numbers. That's not that far different from what it costs us presently. Okay, to do 3-inch overlays. So clearly, this is not feasible for us to use traditional methods to fix our roads. I mean, unless everybody wants to have their dues double or triple, and I don't want that. Anybody else want that? No. But we all want our roads fixed, right? And we hear about this all the time. We all want our roads fixed. Well, this is why it's such a complex problem. Okay? It's a huge amount of money. Okay? It's not a small amount of roads that we have. I've looked at cities that have 15 to 25,000 people that live in them that have less road miles to maintain than we do. Right? And of course, they get to keep their tax dollars, and we don't get to. So, question, which we hear quite often, is could we give our roads to the county? That was the actual original plan when the association was created. The county was supposed to take over responsibility for our roads. Okay? Never happened. All right? So we have investigated that. It's been evaluated a number of times throughout the years. And the answer is no. The county is not interested in taking over our roads unless they charge us a great big assessment like they did at Indian Lakes. So at Indian Lakes, I think the assessment was $20,000 per household, and they only have roughly, I think it's between 6 and 11 miles of roads. Okay? So multiply that by 10 for similar road densities, and that's what we would be looking at for the county to take over our roads if we wanted it to. I would also suggest that we really don't want them to, because if we look at the state of the roads in Madera, I would say that we're not going to be their priority, right? They've got a lot bigger problems, than our roads up here. So the next question is, since we pay taxes, will the county give us some money for the roads? We've evaluated that one too. There's been numerous conversations, and the answer is no. And we've continued to try to get money out of the county. It's very unlikely that we're going to get support from the county. And because we're a private association, we're also not going to get a lot of support from the state. There may be some possibilities to do that, but it's pretty far-fetched. Okay? So that leaves us. Yeah?
One quick question. Has anybody ever addressed just getting some money for the roads that the county people use all the time, mainly Yosemite Springs Parkway?
Yes.
Still private, they won't do it.
Well, I understand it's private, but since it's being used by numerous county residents, it seems like they might be amenable to.
And that is a great question. So the question is, since the road through the park gets used by other county residents and not just us, even though it's a private road, wouldn't the county kick in some dollars for that? And the answer to that, to the best of our ability to determine, is no. They have offered actually in the past to do that, provided we turned that road over to them. However, the decision at that time that was made several years in the past was not to do that. We chose at that time to keep control of the roads. So we do have an option, okay? Because it turns out there's a couple interesting. It turns out that trucks, have a much bigger impact on road degradation than cars. Okay, each heavy, fully loaded truck that drives on the road is the equivalent of about 8,000 to 11,000 cars. Okay? It has to do with the stresses that the roads receive, and the heavier the vehicle is, the more stress. And it's not a linear function either. It's not just that it weighs 40 tons, it's 40 times as much as 1 ton. It actually causes a lot more damage. We do have a potential option where we could choose to close our roads to the public. Okay, we could put up gates. We did have gates at one time. That is an option that we could consider, but it doesn't solve our situation right now. Once we spend money to fix that road, we may want to do something like that, and we'll have more discussions in community evaluations about that. But it's not going to help us in the short term. Okay, so we have. Oh, good question. The question is, are we going to fix the roads after we put the water pipes in, or are we going to fix them ahead? I will answer that question, but I'd like to get to the end of the presentation to answer that, but it's a great question, and it's an important piece of how we need to plan, right? Because we want to always spend our money in as smart a way as possible. So what are our choices? What can we do? Well, we can do nothing. I mean, it's kind of what we've been doing close to nothing. About 10 years ago, in fact, our roads department had twice as many people and twice the budget that it has today. I will give kudos to our current roads manager, who gets more work done with his current crew, even without tools and support, than we were getting done with that crew years ago. But as budgets have been tight, like other municipalities, we have cut spending on infrastructure maintenance. So we currently have 4 people on our roads crew. And they not only fix the potholes and patch the roads, they also pick up all the trash along the roads, they trim the trees, they do a number of other things as well, besides just fixing the roads. So we could do nothing. I mean, that's an option. And given the dollars we're looking at, it's a fair question, it's a fair discussion. So we could convert to gravel roads. Okay, some municipalities are doing that. They're finding that the cost of maintaining lightly traveled roads doesn't justify the cost of putting in asphalt roads. Okay, so there are a number of municipalities that have tried this process. Okay, however, gravel roads have high maintenance costs. Right, because you can imagine they get more potholes, the water affects them more severely, the gravel has to be replaced, all the time. So when you factor that in, there are better options than going to gravel roads. They also have high dust content, and they also decrease property values.
And they tear up your car.
And they tear up your car, and they do, so I don't think going to gravel roads is the right answer. Okay? But it is a fair question, and other municipalities have chosen to do just that. So what I've been doing is evaluating other options. Okay? We have other options like chip seals. Chip seals are the most common road treatment in the United States. Okay? And a chip seal tends to extend the life of your road about 5 to 7 years. And it's a fairly inexpensive treatment at about $30,000 per mile. Okay? So that's an option to get more life out of our roads. There's another technology called autoseals. Okay, autoseals are similar to chip seals. They're deployed a little bit differently. They're in similar cost, but you tend to get longer life out of it. Okay? This is not something that's done in the United States very much. This is something that I uncovered in looking at other countries. Now, Minnesota's been doing this since 2000. Ohio has been, has run a full test. Oregon has done some testing. I think they've done some testing in Kentucky. And those communities have had fairly good results with oscillators and good life expectancy. Foreign countries have had very, very good results with this, particularly in communities in Africa. They tend to do very well where it's hot and not very wet, which is our environment. So that's a viable option. It's much less expensive than doing a 3-inch overlay. Technology has also advanced, and you can do a thin overlay, where instead of doing a 3-inch layer of asphalt on top of the road, you can do as little as 5/8 of an inch. Okay? And that's designed and constructed differently, but that can extend the life of roads, 10 to 12 years. Okay? So there are other options than doing the 3-inch overlay, on our roads, which is, kind of what our game plan was before. That being said, all of these treatments are impacted by the condition of the road that your roads are in at the present time. Okay, so here's a comparison of a number of different types of road treatments and what you expect to get from them. Okay, so the idea behind this, right, is you want to apply the right treatment to the right road at the right time. That's the most cost-effective way to manage your road network. That's the way you're going to spend the least amount of money over the life of the roads. All right? So the strategy that you want to adopt is you want to gain more lane miles per year than you lose. Right? Make sense? So every year we lose 106 lane miles of road life. All right? Because we have 53 miles of roads, 2 lanes each, 106 miles. So every year they get 106 years older collectively. So there are treatments that are available that can extend the road life. So one of those is crack sealing. Okay? Crack sealing is one of the most economical ways to extend the life of your roads. Because if you catch cracks early, that prevents them from turning into larger cracks or potholes or other further degradation that is more expensive to replace later. So typically if you crack seal at the right time, you're going to get 3 to 5 years of additional life out of that road for what it's rated. So a typical road lasts generally 25 years. So if you crack seal at 5 years in, and keep doing that every time you do that, you're going to add 3 to 5 more years of life to that road. However, if your roads are in poor condition, the life extension is definitely on the lower end of it. So you maybe get 3 years of life for doing that type of treatment. So the cost per mile presently is about $3,379, which works out to a cost per year of about $1,126, right? Per lane mile. Okay, so that's a pretty affordable way to keep your roads in good shape. The next option is something called the fog seal. So it turns out one of the biggest reason that roads degrade is they get sunburned. Okay, the sun beats down on the roads, and the ultraviolet light that does that dries out the asphalt cement and the binders that exist and hold that road together. The road then becomes brittle and it's more prone to breaking. So if you catch your roads before they have that problem, and you treat them with something called a rejuvenating fog seal, it restores the plasticity to those roads. It's basically like putting sunscreen on. And it helps protect them and give them longer life. Typically get 4 to 6 years of life extension out of that. If roads are in bad shape, you're not going to get as much. You're only going to get about 3 years. But again, it's fairly affordable. About $4,700 per lane mile, or about $1,572 per lane mile per year. Okay? Chip seals that we talked about, the most common treatment on roads, 5 to 6 years. However, if roads are in poor shape, you'll be pretty lucky to actually get 3 years. So what happens when your roads aren't level, right? Then cars drive over that chip seal. What a chip seal is a layer of asphalt cement and a single layer of single-sized stone that gets pushed into that cement to hold it in place and become a new wearing layer. Yes?
We had our first chip seal. I don't know if the entire park was done maybe 10 years ago.
It's just
Yeah.
the parkway.
No, my road was done, so I don't know, maybe
Yeah.
it's just the main roads?
Yeah, so some of our roads have been chip sealed and have been maintained. I mean, our roads are between 40 and 55 years old, and we actually, for them to be in the shape they're in, we're actually pretty lucky.
Have you seen the records What was done?
Yeah, we don't, not aware of any records that go back that far. But the chip seals are an option. They become less of an option the worse shape the roads get. Okay? There's something called a slurry seal. Typically gives you 5 to 6 years of life. Poor roads, only about 3. There's something called a double auto seal. Okay? That typically gives you about 12 to 15 years of life. In many cases longer, actually. But with roads in poor condition, you only get about 8 years to that. Okay? That costs you about $30,000 per lane mile. You have thin lift HMA, hot mix asphalt overlays, right? Instead of doing 3 inches, you do a smaller amount. Those tend to give you 10 to 12 years. But with roads in poor condition, you're only going to get about 5. And then you can do a thick overlay, as we talked about that one already. If you do it early, you get 15 to 20 years of life out of it. Okay? If you do it late, you only get about 8 years. And part of the reason for that, if you think about it, it's kind of like putting paint over rotten boards or rotten wood, right? If you have potholes and cracks and what are commonly called base failures, then when you put an overlay over the top of that road, it's going to look great, okay? But it's not going to be very long before those underlying distresses reflect back up through that road, okay? So you have to take into account the current condition of the road. How many, if it has rutting, if it has transverse cracking, if it has alligator cracking, if it has, horizontal or longitudinal cracks. I mean, a whole bunch of different things you have to look at when you evaluate that road to determine what the appropriate treatment is and make an estimate of how long you think that will last. Okay? So then you get into the bottom part of that curve. Okay? And the bottom part of that curve is you don't put a layer over the top of the existing asphalt. Okay? You say, look, the road has gotten to such shape that we need to go through, and we need to go in, and we need to fix the road. Now, a lot of times when you think layer of asphalt, doesn't give the road that much structure and support. What gives the road structure and support is the road base underneath it. And what usually happens when roads fail is that sub-base underneath it has deteriorated. That's what needs to be repaired. So there are a couple options that have been developed over the last several years that allow you to do just that. One of them is called FDR, or full depth reclamation. What full depth reclamation does is it takes a great big rototiller and it goes and grinds up all the surface of your existing roads, and it grinds down another 9 to 10 inches into the underlying road base. Okay, mixes all of that together. You can stabilize it with a number of other things like cement, or there are some chemical stabilizers that work. But you can mix that in, and then what you do when you have a new good road base is you recompact that. You level it, and you prepare it for putting a new surface layer on. And that actually is where the strength of the road comes from. Okay? And so when you get to the shape where most of our roads are, that kind of tends to be the most cost-effective way to approach that. So once you do have that strong base layer, okay, you have a couple options for what you want to put on top of it to drive on. All right, you could put a chip seal. I didn't put that in this list, but you could put a chip seal on top of that and drive on top of that. And that lasts you about 5 to 6 years in that case, because now you've got a good, flat, solid base for that chip seal to rest on. But AutoSeal tends to last longer and be similar priced. So for AutoSeal, you would expect a full depth reclamation plus AutoSeal to last about 20 years. Okay? At a cost of about $50,000 per lane mile. Works out to about $2,500 per lane mile. Per year per lane mile. Okay? You could do a full depth reclamation and an overlay. Okay, that's going to be, more expensive. This is a relatively thin overlay, but you could do, full depth reclamation in a 2-inch asphalt. Most of our roads would only need 2 inches of asphalt on top of them to support the traffic flows that we have. Okay, but it's going to be more expensive. Okay, Or you could reconstruct the road entirely, which is the traditional way of doing that, where you come in, you rip out the road, you haul everything away, you bring a new base in, you recompact and you rebuild the road from scratch. Okay? I'm just putting that up there for a comparison. Obviously, that's not a smart way to do it. All right? It's not what I would recommend or what I would propose. But so when you look at the various options that are available, and you look at the condition that our roads are in, kind of three things jump out as the most cost-effective treatments. Okay? One's crack sealing and pothole repairing. Okay? Because we got to keep what we have. Second is fog sealing. Even though they don't last as long as it would catch the roads when they're in good shape, they do give you extended years of life. They seal the small cracks, they restore the plasticity to the road, and they keep it from cracking and being as brittle as it was. So you actually gain years in terms of road life if you do that treatment. And then the ultimate longer term, my recommendation would be do FDR plus Odyssey. Okay, we'll talk more about that later. This is going to be a little farther down, down the road. No pun intended. Okay. So any questions? Any comments? Yes, ma'am.
So with that FDR and Odyssey, you'll take into consideration that some of our pipes probably aren't actually very, very deep.
Yes, but I don't believe we have any pipes that are less than 12 inches. I think the minimum we found is about 24 so far.
Yeah, the new pipes are going in at least 30 inches, 36 inches of cover. We do have some that are a little shallower because we're going over culverts. But we haven't found anything less than 24 inches. The laterals are somewhat shallow. They're like 18 inches. But we also find other things where they've gone basically over rock and put things right on top of the rock and pave over. Fortunately, it's not the laterals, it's a telephone lines that run in.
Yeah. And then we end up replacing when we put in a new pipeline, every lateral gets replaced.
So when you're finding them going over the rocks, you guys are like blowing the rock out, making it go deeper.
Yeah, we are.
Yeah, we pull out about 8 to 10 inches below the depth of the bottom of the pipe and put in our clean fill, recompact that, and then put the pipe on it, and put clean fill all the way up to the surface. And same with laterals.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so if I'm clear, everything we're talking about here, short of reconstructing all those, is repairing old bulky. My question is, how close are we, because the roads, there's no point in even putting Band-Aids on the road until the water pipes are completely replaced. How close are we to?
We will talk about that. Okay, that question was after. I'm plenty happy to talk about it, but let me get the information out, so then it will make more sense when I go through some of the details. Okay, so good question. Yes, sir.
Do we have any say in what happens, or no, we're just because 8 years ago, we listened to another sales presentation, and they said that they'd done extensive research and they ground their brains over it and done this, that, and the other thing, and they calculated that if we paid another $200 a year, they'd be able, over 20 years, replace all the water lines and the roads. And then, right now, I'm paying $1,600 a year, which is $800 a year more than I was paying when I first moved in here, and nothing has changed, and I'd like to know where all the money's going,
Okay.
and what's happened to it.
And that's a fair question. I get where you're going.
And I'd like to know if we have any say in this, or are we just sitting here listening to this conversation and have you later on tell us, this is what we're gonna do, and you're gonna have to pay another $1,000 a year to do it.
Sir, I understand where you're going. I hear the whole question. I will address those things also. I want to get the information in the presentation out. Okay? It's a very fair question. And to answer part of it, yes, of course you as a homeowner have some say in what goes on. The homeowners elect the board. The board ultimately makes those decisions. As a general manager, I make recommendations to the board based on, I'm not trying to push that off on the board. But that ultimately is the board's responsibility, and was the board's responsibility all of those prior years as well. And then just real quickly, there has been, there's not been nothing being done. The pipeline project is moving slower than what was originally promised. That is true. I can't take any I won't take any responsibility or any blame for that one because I wasn't here. But I'll tell you some things that we are doing to make that work better and be more cost effective. That's also part of this presentation. Okay. But fair questions, and I understand the frustration. All right, this also is from the report that that California provides every 2 years, and it's the result of a survey of municipalities on what they have found to be more cost effective than traditional techniques. Okay? Because traditionally, you would just let your road get bad and you'd go replace it, because asphalt wasn't that expensive. All right? 30 years ago, it cost you about $30,000 a mile to come put an overlay on your road. And even adjusted for inflation, that's much, much, much less than what it costs today. Cost of asphalt cement has just gone up tremendously, particularly in the last 10 years. But if you look at this, two things are going to jump out. One is that pavement preservation, right, is the most cost-effective method of extending the life of your roads. Okay, that's your best return on your dollars. And the second is that full depth reclamation, okay, is very cost-effective compared to other alternatives when you have to do a major rehabilitation. Okay, so, all right, David, next one. Third thing, fog seals. Okay, well, fog would have been great if we fog sealed the roads, early on. However, fog seal still has relative advantage for relatively small cost. Okay, and it's a key component of that strategy of gaining more road year life than you lose every year. Okay. Next, we're going to do some selective base repair. We have large extended sections where it doesn't make sense to come. If you've got 6 or 7 potholes, in a stretch of 100 feet of road, something else is going on with that road. You don't just want to come and patch those 6 or 7 potholes, because the chances are you're going to get a lot more potholes and a lot more degradation in that road. So the best strategy to hold on to that road is to do a base repair of a section of that road. Not a whole mile, but we're talking 50 feet to 100 feet lane mile. All right, so much larger than a typical patch. But it's going to buy you more life for that part that's gotten so bad that you can't, or getting so bad that you can't drive on it anymore. So we need to fix the sections that have to be fixed. And one thing that we can do to be more cost effective with that is we actually have an option to recycle the existing asphalt to save money. Turns out asphalt is the most commonly recycled product in the entire world. 100% of what exists in our roads is actually reusable with the addition of a little bit more asphalt cement and some treatment. And doing that can help us save a significant amount of money from tearing up the road and hauling it away. Okay, so we're gonna talk about that and what that looks like from an economic standpoint in a few minutes. And then the longer term strategy, which we will still discuss. Okay, these are not. This is not saying, hey, this is what we're doing off to the races. This is a multi-year thing. But my recommendation will be that we look at FDR and Odyssey. That's what's going to jump out as the most cost-effective solution. But we're going to have to experiment with that. We're going to have to test it. Okay, next slide. Okay, so what do we need to do now to make this happen? All right. I told you when I did the budget in the spring, I was looking at this and saying, hey, roads keep going, yeah, they're bad, but we can squeeze some more years of life out of it. I'm telling you, it's not the case. I was made a bad assumption. I did not know at that time. Okay? So what do we need to do? Well, first of all, Robotics is a company that does AI-based road assessments. Okay? They have a trained artificial intelligence that evaluates videos and pictures of the roads that are taken in a certain special way that can identify the stresses and problems with the section of road. And they basically take a picture every 10 feet of that road, and then they tell you, oh, this road's in good shape, this road's in bad shape, this section's in good shape, this section's in bad shape. So then you can intelligently determine where you're going to invest your efforts. Okay? And it gives us a whole map, we'll talk about that more in just a minute. Next, spray patch injection, okay, or spray patchers, were developed as a way to do road repair back in the 80s, actually. They are considered, in the largest study that's ever been done of pothole repairs, they are considered the most cost-effective way to repair potholes. They're also flexible and they can repair many other aspects of the road. This machine, for example, can repair small potholes literally in the matter of a couple minutes. Okay? It's about 3 times more productive, okay, than doing a traditional, what's called semi-permanent pothole repair. All right? So a tool like this will enhance the efficiency of our existing road crew and allow them to do more with the same numbers of people. Asphalt recycling. Okay. Currently, because we live about an hour away from hot mix plants, it costs us almost as much to get hot mix delivered to us as it does to buy the hot mix. So hot mix rates, you know, if anybody doesn't know what hot mix is, it's the heated up asphalt that goes, you know, that goes down on the ground or comes out of the pavement, right? And that has to be at temperature in order to be laid correctly. Yes, sir?
Are you discussing more equipment that you're planning to buy?
Yes, sir, I am.
They
So-
spent $40,000 on an asphalt recycler. What does it cost a month?
Okay, so we're gonna get there, okay? Trust me, run the numbers. This is not it's not a back of the envelope assessment, okay? Number one strategy that I always use in evaluating anything is smart spending. If we don't get a return on that investment, we're not gonna spend the money.
What happened to all the equipment that we
Excuse
supposedly bought
me,
before?
sir. I'm happy to take more questions later, but at this point, you're interfering with the rest of the presentation for the rest of the people, okay?
Well, we supposedly bought all this
Sir,
equipment.
excuse me, please, I will be happy to talk to you as long as you want after the meeting, but at this point, it's more disruptive than beneficial, okay? But I'm happy to answer whatever question you have. Okay, so the asphalt recycler can produce asphalt, allow us to recycle the asphalt we have at about $20 per ton, as opposed to about $100 to $120 per ton delivered. Okay, so it's a significant savings. As an example of that, our trench, okay, when we pave a mile of trench, it takes about $30,000 worth of asphalt and delivery costs to put a 3-inch layer in that trench. Okay? If you can cut that by 75 or 80%, that's a significant savings. The other benefit that it provides, in particular with the pipeline project, is that right now we wait until a whole big section of the pipeline is done, okay? Because we want to finish the whole section and have it all hooked up to make sure there are no leaks and that everything passes. Because if you had to go back and fix something, you'd be tearing up the road that you just patched. With these cost levels, all right, and the ability to recycle that asphalt again if the event you had to go back and fix something, it all of a sudden makes economic sense to pave that trench as you go. So now you don't leave that trench exposed, okay, which has extra maintenance costs, it creates extra dirt, it creates disruption for the community. So there's other benefits besides just the financial, economic benefit of doing recycling. And that's just one example. Okay. Asphalt zipper. Okay. What the asphalt zipper does is it's like a rototiller for the road. Like we were talking about, if you're going to do full depth reclamation, you need a tool like this. As an example of the efficiency you gain, it currently takes us about 10 labor hours to open up 100 feet of trench for the pipeline. Okay? Which is 300 square feet of asphalt. Similar for our roads crew. Okay? It's about 10 labor hours to do that. So what that translates to, okay, is about 500, right? It's about 500 hours per mile that it takes us in labor to jackhammer the edges of that, and to lift up the asphalt, and put it in a truck, and then we haul the truck over and dump it in our yard, and then we have to pay somebody, by the way, to come then take that asphalt somewhere else, which I didn't even include in those things. An asphalt zipper, okay, that's designed specifically for doing this kind of work, can actually do that in about an hour. Okay, an hour to 2 hours. It's certainly less than 5. So it's 100 times more efficient to use that piece of equipment, okay, than it is to keep doing that by hand. So if we have a piece of equipment like that, then our pipeline crew is going to be more productive because you keep the same labor, and then instead of doing it something manual, you're doing something automatic, and then they can make faster progress. Okay? The asphalt zipper also enables us to do those larger sections of base repair. Remember, if you were going to tear out a 50-foot or 100-foot section of road and then replace or fix that, right, that's 1,200 square feet. All right, that's 100 feet long. We're saying 300 square feet takes us about 10 labor hours, right? So 1,200 square feet takes us about 40 labor hours to do that. Where here the asphalt zipper can come in and do that in an hour, and your crew then gets to be more productive and more effective with the labor that you have. Okay.
Jonathan, what kind of training would our crew have to have to use all of this equipment?
That's a great question, Deanna. The training is relatively minimal. And this equipment is like the spray catcher. The robotics training, takes a couple hours. The spray catcher, about 2 to 3 hours of training for operation. The asphalt recycler, about the same. Asphalt zipper, a little bit longer than that, but it also only takes 2 people to operate. Okay, same thing with the spray catcher. You only need 2 people on that crew to operate, instead of like 4 people on that crew that go out to repair a single pothole. And then line painter, we had talked about, and what I had recommended in the spring was that we outsource the line painting from a safety standpoint to paint 22 miles of road lines this year. Okay, that was because the equipment we had was complex to operate. It didn't operate reliably, and it took 3 people as part of that team to go do that. When we looked at the numbers, it made more sense to outsource it, particularly if we weren't going to be coming back to the roads for 5 or 6 years. Since we're going to be coming back to the roads sooner because we need to, it turns out it's more cost effective than to actually get your own line painter. Because they have new equipment that is operated with a single person, but potentially 2 if you're in a busy section of the road, that paints lines at 5 to 8 miles an hour. It's not complicated like what we did before. It's straightforward, it's simple. And then we own the equipment and can keep doing it forever, because we're going to keep painting lines forever. Yes, ma'am.
The dollar amounts that you have on the board,
Yes.
is that for new equipment or used equipment?
Yes. Some of it is, this is a service. Okay? So the spray catcher is used. The asphalt recycler is used. The asphalt zipper is new. The line painter is new. Those kinds of equipment, if they're not well maintained, which is hard to tell, then you don't end up getting good life expectancy out of it. Whereas the recycler and the spray catcher, they're not as tricky to maintain. So
Can you get insurance or some kind of coverage on the maintenance on these? Because what is the maintenance on here?
yeah, there are maintenance costs, and there are operations costs to these, but they are relatively as a percentage of the total.
Would we still be able to use the paint that we already bought?
Yes. So these are the pieces or the things that we need if we want to get started on being more aggressive about taking care of our roads today. Okay? And I know that's a lot of money. All right? So we're not gonna take questions for a couple minutes, okay? I'm happy to answer any questions people have, but let me get through this because it may turn out that we answer your questions. Okay? So phase 2, okay, which I'm recommending, but it's not something we're going to adopt, right now. You would need a grader, you would need a pneumatic roller, and you would need a distributor and a chip seal. And that's roughly what those pieces of equipment cost. Okay? Next slide. Okay, Yeah, you went to. Okay, so the question is, how do we do this? Right? We already have our budget in place, you know? So what do we do? Well, the answer is we be smart with our existing budget, okay? As we talked about when we had the budget meeting, you know, budgets are guidelines, all right? We are gonna go, as we go through the year, we learn more information, you know, we may need to reprioritize things a little bit. So our current budget has $100,000 for future road repair. Because we started the process of putting those dollars away so that in year 6, we would have enough money put away to do 2 miles of roads at $400,000, okay? So this is already in the budget, it's already there, the $100,000. But by getting phase 1 equipment now, okay, we will save money in the future without increasing future budget or dues. Okay? Because instead of saving it and letting it sit in the bank until we have $400,000, we don't have to wait that long anymore. Because we have another approach to solve this and get going now, and we actually have the dollars available to do it. Phase 2 equipment could be paid for with the current budget that's already paying for the trencher and the loader. Okay? The trencher and the loader will be paid off next year. So without additional budget, we actually can get all of the equipment that we need in order to fully maintain and repair and replace our roads over the next 7 years. We would need additional budget for materials and supplies. There's no magic solution, right? We looked at those numbers when we started it, talking about $25 million or $29 million by the state's estimate. By being creative, okay, and looking at alternative solutions and being smart about how we're spending our money, we're actually able to find a lot of dollars in our existing budget where we can be more efficient, and we can end up much closer to a cost of about $100,000 to $125,000 a month, okay, which is a lot more tenable than $400,000 to $500,000 a month, right? So, okay, next slide, David.
Thank you, that you're a woman.
Okay, so this is how we can actually pay for it. So robotics, $5,000, we can work that out of our existing road. Okay, no change to dues, no change to expenses, because we can cover that in the budget road. Spray patcher, well, we can cover that out of our existing budget also, because we had in the budget to add a 5th person to our roads crew. Well, it turns out that the loaded wages for the 5th person we were going to add is just about $35,000. Instead of adding a 5th person to the crew to just keep doing the inefficient process that we have, instead we can get this piece of equipment that will make that crew way more productive. Okay? So again, we're going to do it out of the current budget. We don't have to take, there's no extra dues, there's no extra cost, for us to do that outside of our existing budget. Traffic control. Okay, so the board has approved, I recommended and the board approved that we get automated traffic control for our PRP project. The reason for this is it takes 2,000 to 3,000 hours a year of labor to have people stand on the road and hold signs. Okay? It's not a very efficient use of our time, but it's an important part of the time because it's required for safety. However, if you buy automated signals to control that traffic for $30,000, you can take that person to person and a half and you can put them in the trench to get a much more productive crew. It's like adding another person and a half to your actual pipeline construction crews. Someone standing there on the road on the side. Okay? That, we already have money in the budget from prior years, put in specifically for the PRP and road projects we call OSS. It's already there. We have it available. And it's going to produce a return on investment itself in a matter of months, because we're actually going to go from 6 people on that crew right now to 5 people on that crew, but actually have more productive work hours. Okay? Line payment. Okay. For my proposal is we do a 5-year lease. The funds from the roads reserve in the current budget. Okay, it's already there. Asphalt recycle. Same thing. We can use that to get that equipment now and start getting a return on our investment using money we already have in the budget. Same thing with the asphalt zip. Okay? Yes.
Lease to buy?
Yes, we would own the equipment at the end.
Where do you do the trench?
Whoever do the trench. Yeah, but we structure it as a lease, you know, on the equipment. But yes, we would own the equipment at the end. Next slide. Oh, I think we missed that. Now we're going the wrong way. Yeah, no, you're going down. We're going straight going down. There you go. Keep going. Keep going. Keep going. Okay. So, all right. This, guys, this is the important page. Okay, it shows you why it makes sense to spend the money now and get going on fixing this problem and how it's going to benefit us in our community. Okay, traffic control. We just talked about this. $30,000 for that piece of equipment. Okay, the annual return on investment, because we're paying for it now, there's no annual payments, the total cost is $30,000. The annual return on investment is estimated at least $60,000, between $60,000 and $90,000 a year in fully loaded labor costs. Okay, so assume it's 60. That equipment lasts 20 years. So the total return, 60,000 times 20, okay, minus what you paid for it, okay, based on 2,000 hours a year in labor savings, means that we get the equivalent of $1.17 million to do other things with. All right? That is smart spending. That's using technology instead of using manual labor, and it's putting money back in the homeowner's pockets. Okay? Spray patching, $35,000. We pay for that out of the existing budget. So there's no payments, annual return on investment. Okay, it replaces one person on the crew. The actual return, I am very conservative in my estimates on these things. All right, guys, I'm not trying to sell you a story or feed you a line. I'm really, you know, I don't operate that way. You guys have been to these town halls. I tell it to you like it is. So we get at least $35,000 in value. And think about that for a second. If our crew could patch potholes 3 times faster than they do you think we'd get at least $35,000 a year in return on that? Right? We get the $35,000 a year in return because we had that piece of equipment instead of the 5th person. But that's assuming it didn't make them any more efficient. It just took the place of that one person. Okay, so if you look at that, and that lasts for 10 years, that $315,000 is our total return on investment over the life of that piece of equipment. Okay? Line painter. All right? Cost us $35,000. An annual payment would be $8,300. The total cost would be $41,000. So the annual return on investment is $3,600 on the line painter. Okay? And I figured that it's $12,000 for us to outsource the line painting minus our costs, okay, which gives us about, $3,500 in return on investment. Bottom line is we could either pay somebody else to come and do it, or we could have that piece of equipment and we could use that piece of equipment for 15 years to paint all the lines that come up as we're going to be actively maintaining these roads. One thing that happens is if you fog seal the roads, you got to repaint the roads because they go over the existing lines. So it's something that we're going to need to do regularly for years and years. Okay? Asphalt recycler costs us $40,000. The annual payment on that would be $9,500. So the total cost over 5 years is about $47,000. the annual return on investment, assuming we recycled 500 tons, okay, and saved $80 per ton. Okay? So right now, we actually spend, this cost savings is actually bigger than that. Okay? But I'm being conservative in estimating that. So if we recycle 500 tons, which is about as much as it takes to do a mile of trench, okay, so we know we're gonna need to do that much, we will, every year, save $40,000 in asphalt and delivery. Okay? So if we do that for 10 years, we're gonna return $352,000. Right? When you look at the numbers and you look at the efficiencies we get, it makes sense. Asphalt zipper, $175,000. That's an annual payment of $41,000. It's a lot of money. What do we get for that? Well, we get an annual return on investment of at least $35,000. Where do I get that? 1,000 hours per year of labor savings. We know we save 500 hours for every mile of trench that we do. Okay? And the roads crew is going to be digging up that amount of roads or more. Okay? And so they also save time in doing it. And that's money then that gets, invested in getting things fixed instead of, doing things manually if you're not doing manually. So when you total that up, you end up getting just shy of $2 million of return on your investment over the life of that equipment. Okay, it's not like you're going to get $2 million back today. But you're going to get money back in cost savings and efficiency for things we have to do anyway. Unless we choose to do nothing with the roads. I mean, that's an option. Yes, sir.
Are you gonna, depreciate these pieces of equipment so that you can, buy new equipment in the 20 years, 10 years?
The pieces of equipment will need to be depreciated
And you're gonna have
and you would
to
set
put that
aside,
cost in there.
you would set aside reserves.
Yeah, we're
Reserves.
looking at, before the year, you're looking at $30,000-$40,000.
Yeah, and we can do a more complex financial analysis of the return on investment. What I'm trying to provide here, I hope you also see it's conservative in the estimates, but it gives you, gives you a realistic picture of what's the value of doing this and why would we do it today? So the question comes up, lease equipment. Why would we want to lease equipment and pay interest? Right? Well, the answer is because then we get that piece of equipment today and we can start using it. So the evaluation is the use you get from that equipment worth more than the interest you pay to get it today? And the answer to that is yes. It's definitely worth more. So when you total this up, okay, and I didn't actually plan it this way, just as how the numbers came out. The annual payment for the items that I'm suggesting that we finance with the money we've already set aside for roads is $59,400. Well, we were going to spend $60,000 on outsourcing the painting. Okay? So it just turns out that by doing this ourselves, we're still spending the same amount of money out of what we had set aside to save for roads, for future repairs. We're still going to spend the same dollars. Okay? And we know we were going to have to keep putting money aside for roads. We are going to have to, we'll have to pay that next year, and the year after, and the year after, for that 5 years. But again, that's already factored into our budget. Okay? So by approaching things this way, we actually are able to get the equipment we need. We're able to start working on the roads sooner. We're able to be more efficient and more effective with what we're doing. And we don't have to increase dues or for that part of it. So I think that's pretty awesome.
This is great, by the way, and I think being more efficient, does that mean we can change the priority of what we're going to pave and do? And I'm looking at, why don't we do the parkway?
Gene, it's a complex question. And I'm very happy again to answer it and discuss it. Let me get through a couple of other points.
Just not.
Yeah.
Is that a 551% return on investment?
Yes, it is.
Does that include maintenance?
That does not include maintenance.
Will they take care of the maintenance?
No, we still have to cover maintenance, but maintenance is a small percentage of that. And again, I'm conservative in estimating what the return on investment is. But even if I'm wrong, right? I mean, even if we only get half of that, it's still worth doing.
How about insurance? Would it be a small fee for insurance?
Yeah, we'll have to pay insurance on that too. Again, it's very small percentage.
Do we have somewhere to store all of this equipment?
Yeah.
It's a great question. It's a great question. That question has been asked. Right now we can store that equipment in the yard that we have, but we are looking at creating a covered location to store them. It's not super expensive to do, but that's something that we would be looking to do.
Is it safe? I mean, is it something, I don't know how big what things are, but, I mean, we're gonna get them people stealing them?
No, we can lock them and secure them in the yard where we store other equipment. And I'm gonna show you what this stuff looks like and how it works in a minute for people that are interested. Yeah.
So does that mean that the equipment will go out for a day and come back in for a day? Or we have it all? How is it transported? How is the equipment transported?
Yeah, but most of this equipment is on trailers. Okay, traffic control, we drive our cars and take the pictures of. Spray patcher connects to the dump truck. The line painter either is self-propelled or it can be hauled on a trailer. Asphalt recycler and asphalt zipper are on trailers.
Pardon?
Real super quick, easy question.
Yeah.
So when you say the HOA is about increasing the HOA dues above the budget, is that above the budget that's already increased about $100 a year for the next 5 years, or higher than what it is right now?
We don't have to increase our budget at all
Okay.
to cover, yeah,
Increase our HOA dues as per right now?
yes, as per right now. We can get all of this equipment without increasing our HOA dues any amount to pay for. We can pay for 100% out of our existing budget. Today. Yeah. Even if dues did go up 0 next year, we could pay for this. Now, there are other things that, go up. I mean, inflation hits us all.
But that FOS class for 5 years is still in place, right?
Yep, it's still in place. Yes, sir.
Are you planning on addressing how you mesh road repair with pipe repair?
It's a great question, and I don't know that we'll get there tonight, other than in general terms, but we will definitely address it. All right, next question.
I'm concerned with this storage. You're gonna store it like you did the trenches down there on the main road for 2.5 months?
No, it will be stored in the equipment yard. Okay, the trencher's too large to store in the equipment yard, and it costs us. No. This equipment's fairly small. Okay. So, yes, sir.
Quick question, after we start on the roads and some of the equipment's not being used somewhere, what would be the possibility of doing somebody else's property, or is there take the money on site?
That's a great question. That certainly is a possibility, but we're going to make sure we get the 4-piece going first. But we've actually tossed that idea in as a added value to homeowners. Okay, so the next piece that I'm going to talk about is I'm going to go through each of those things I'm recommending we get. I'm going to show you videos of what they look like and what they do. You guys are welcome to stay if people are interested in that, but that is the meat of the financial component of what we were talking about. Okay?